Hi, and welcome to Tech Leader TV. I'm your host, John Thomas Flynn, and this show continues our 13th season of TLTV, a live streaming video webcast and cable television program. Of course, we come to you today, as we do every day, courtesy of our sponsors, Veeam, Advanced Onion, Akamai, Carousel, Symantec, FireEye, VMware, Granicus, CrowdStrike, and our Washington, D.C. partner, Federal News Network. We have another very exciting show today with a distinguished representative from the California Department of Social Services. But before I introduce our guest, I'd like to take a few minutes, as frequent Tech Leader TV viewers will recall, to pontificate on pressing issues of the day. At our last show, we startled the state establishment with our radical suggestions to change the culture, the operations, and the status quo at the beleaguered California Department of Motor Vehicles, affectionately or not so affectionately known as the DMV. We welcomed the initial report of the governor's so-called DMV strike team during our last show, even though the preliminary recommendations were relatively modest. Kiosks, a chat box in the call center, a new website, Wi-Fi in DMV offices, and an aggressive $10 million marketing campaign. And finally, a commitment that DMV will roll out credit card acceptance statewide next year. However, we tempered our skepticism with the fact that this was an initial preliminary report to be followed by a final report from the strike team in a few weeks. Well, the final report is out, and okay, I'll let you be the judge. There is some significant additional funding for sure, and as many as 600 new employees to be hired. And contracts have been awarded to large, traditional government sector computer firms, not Silicon Valley superstars, but to fix the decade-old technology issues. But there was an announcement of a new DMV director, Steve Gordon, previously with the La Jolla-based Z-Transforms, and a decade and a half at Cisco. There's 2 new deputy directors for communications, press people that is. That alone should turn things around, right? But seriously, will that address the absenteeism rate at DMV that's 82% higher than the statewide average? What about the secret DMV office in the bowels of the state office building across from the Capitol for the exclusive use of legislators and other elected officials and agency political appointees and their families, of course, to avoid the inconvenience we taxpayers have to put up with? What about another secret DMV issue? 2 million special plates each year are issued to state and local government officials statewide, government lawyers, prosecutors, judges, public safety officials, and their families, ostensibly to protect them from people going to DMV to find their address, a practice that was disallowed at DMV 30 years ago. Secret plates, what are they good for? Well, they make their drivers often immune to speed and red light cameras, tolls, even special treatment if pulled over, because they're part of the in crowd. During our last show, I said this is part of the culture that has to change. It's like the special treatment for the old Soviet commissars, off limits to us, the benighted public. Finally, there's an 800-pound gorilla bearing down on DMV, the federal 2005 Real ID law, whereby every state must issue a new driver's license designed to prevent another 911 where the terrorist hijackers were able to fraudulently obtain licenses and get on the ill-fated airplanes. And since California has dithered over a decade in complying with the 2005 law, we now face that huge gorilla. 28 million Californians, 28 million, will need to get these Real ID licenses by October 2020. That's only 14 months from now. So that means DMV must service 2 million customers in person each month over that period, just for the Real ID compliant licenses, not counting the 34 million car registration and related services each year. And I'm not even going to bring up motor voter. Real ID is important as well. Without the new license, you can't get on an airplane. I'd say that was important. The new DMV boss, Steve Gordon, has his work cut out for him, huh? And we wish him well. Can't wait to get him on the show. Well, as we like to say on this show, the state of California can always do better. So let's continue our journey today as we discuss government, politics, technology, and as I like to say, other unnatural acts. We'll be right back in a moment with our guest and get started. Hi, and welcome back to Tech Leader TV. Our guest today is Brian Wong. Brian is the Deputy Director and Chief Information Officer for the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Sorry about that. Got DVMV on our minds here at Tech Leader TV, at the Department of Social Services. But prior to DSS, he actually was at DMV for, I think, 9 years, serving as a framework manager and project director for IT modernization, and provided executive leadership and oversight over modernization of DMV's legacy applications and infrastructure. He was also manager responsible for network security and services throughout DMV's 180 field offices, plus the headquarters office here in Sacramento. So Brian, welcome to Tech Leader TV.
Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
You know, I could just throw away my prepared questions and we could just focus on DMV if you'd like.
That's okay.
Just kidding. No, we like to make this comfortable. I touched upon your background and experience, but tell me a little bit more. Fill in the blanks here about your career before you got into government service, because I know you spent some time in the private sector as well.
Yeah. So I did spend 7 years with the Oracle Corporation. That's where I really, I think, developed my technical chops, if you will. I started off at their global help desk, moved into more of a business liaison role years down the road, and ultimately ended up serving as an extranet engineer. Like I said, that's where I think I really developed my technical expertise and customer service background. Mm-hmm. So that's mainly my private industry experience. As you mentioned, I did spend 10 years with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Mm-hmm. Currently, I'm with the Department of Social Services as their Chief Information Officer. I've been doing that now for almost 2 years exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But you're a 49er, right, out of the Long Beach?
I am, proudly,
okay.
Yes.
And you went right from there to Oracle?
No, actually, I had a couple other jobs before that, but Oracle is my primary experience in private industry. So.
And how did you decide to go into public service?
You know what? It's interesting you asked that. My parents were both in public service, and it was something that I had many conversations with my parents on. As a youth, thought I knew better, right?
Yeah.
So went down my own path, and after a while, I just started to think, I think state government would be a good opportunity for me. And as I jumped into it, I really enjoy the mission of what we do. Being able to serve the citizens of California is just an amazing feeling. And each and every day, I'm very happy and excited to do that. So.
Well, and certainly you're in an organization, the Department of Social Services, whose primary responsibilities are in that arena of service to our most challenged citizens, if you will. Tell us a little bit more about DSS before we get into your own own organization.
Well, as you said, John, the mission of social services, it speaks for itself, right? We're serving the most vulnerable citizens in the state of California. Quite frankly, that was lost on me when I took this position. I didn't realize how important that really is. And when I got to the department, and I started to meet the different program folks and really get embedded into the department, it was just it's been an amazing experience. I've seen myself personally transformed. I'm finding myself more involved in my community because of that. So just a great experience. We have a brand new director, Kim Johnson, who is an outstanding leader. My boss, Pat Leary, outstanding support. It's just a great organization. It's very family oriented, I guess, was the best way to put it. So. Yeah.
And I believe, I think there's almost 5,000 employees at DSS and a multi-billion, 20-some billion dollar budget, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Tell us about, is it Information Services Division? Is that
Systems.
Your
Information
Systems Division.
Yes.
Tell us more about that. I know you report up to Leary, who's the Chief Deputy for, I guess, that administration, or? Yeah,
yes.
And you report to him.
So, basically, I have about 220 employees and growing. We're broken out into 3 branches. So I have an operations branch, what I would consider more of an application development branch, and then the project management office. And so that's how we're aligned organizationally. I do have a chief technology officer as well. That's a new addition to the organization. It's been a very big help to me in furthering the mission of social services and really growing our IT organization.
And not to mention probably a chief security officer as well.
So I do have a chief information officer. That position actually is currently vacant, so I am recruiting.
Okay.
Okay.
For CISO?
Yes.
Oh, CISO.
Yes.
Okay. How large is your IT organization?
So we have about 200 plus employees, as I mentioned earlier, and growing. So, and a $40 million, probably about $40 million budget, a little bit under.
Yeah, you know, it's since the coming of the Office of Systems Integration,
Yes.
which, as you know, is the group that overall is responsible for managing some of the social service related information technology projects, but probably broader than that. It actually reminds me back when I was CIO, back when Russ Bohart was a data center manager for HHS, and he kind of took over all those projects. So OSI is kind of, in a way, the latest generation of that.
Sure.
So if you have an IT project, and let's say it's a child welfare system or food stamps or any of these, they're actually managed by OSI. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is, tell us about how that works and your relationship with him for those particular projects, because I'm sure most people, like including myself, don't really understand.
Yeah, so the Office of Systems Integration, OSI, runs our most of our major projects, if you will. Our role in that becomes more of as a sponsor, project sponsor. My role in particular, I would say, is of being a sponsor, and then also oversight, making sure that we're getting our needs met, if you will. I'll say that in my 2 years with the department, I have a great relationship with OSI. I respect what they do, and I think that we have a great partnership. For myself, we do have one reportable project that we're running ourselves currently. It's our county expense claim reporting information system. So that project is one that we actually are running ourselves, and excited to do that as well. So it's really, in many cases, I think it's what I would say a conversation where you determine where does this project best align. Is it best to be run through OSI, or is it something that should be run through the departments?
And which are the ones that normally are DSS projects that are being run, in addition to, I mentioned child welfare? What about where are all the SAWS projects these days?
So that's run through OSI as well.
Is it still just, or did they consolidated it into one, or is it still several?
It's still underway. You know, I think, as I said, there were 3 systems, from what I understand, in the past.
There was 4 when I was there.
Okay, yeah. So 3 systems in the
Consortium,
past.
1, 2, 3 or 4.
Yeah, so I know that there were 3 systems from my own history, if you would call it. And 2 of those have been consolidated, from my understanding, to LRS. And now the next step is to take that, I believe it's C4, and bring that all together into one Cal SAWS, one system.
And is like the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children, is that all? The food stamps, those are all under?
So WIC, that is also run through OSI.
Okay.
Yes.
That's kind of good news, bad news for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting paradigm. You know, it's something that I touched on when I first started the position. It's different. It is different for me. You know, coming from an organization where I was more inclined to run my own projects, if you will. That's what I was accustomed to. Not to say this is a bad or not ideal. I do think that, like I said, OSI does a good job running the projects, and I'm excited to continue to partner with them.
Well, we invited Dan Calamaris to come to watch the program, but he was tied up this morning.
Oh, okay.
Well, what do you do with him when you've got a project that gets in a little bit of, let's say, has problems? How do you?
Well, I mean, I think
is it your responsibility to basically to say, hey, you know, Calamaris, get your act together, or how do you do it?
Not exactly like that. No, I think like I said, it's a good partnership. I have the utmost respect for Dan and his team, and so I feel comfortable if there is a situation where we need to chat, if there's something that needs to be discussed, then we can have those conversations and rectify, if you will, or move forward. So yeah, I absolutely feel comfortable with that. Dan is very open, great leader. So yeah, no issues there.
Okay, let's go back to your own organization for a while and your management style. So you mentioned, what, 3 or 4 direct reports under you?
Yes, I do have, well, actually right now I have the Chief Technology Officer that reports to me. My Project Management Officer reports to me, and then ultimately an Information Security Officer will report to me as well.
Okay.
So it'll be 3.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and any changes I guess the question I was getting at, did you change your organizational structure when you took the position?
I did.
2 years ago?
I did, to some extent. Part of that was driven by the IT class consolidation effort. So, you know, some of that I had really no say in, quite frankly. But that being said, yes, I did. One of the things I alluded to earlier is bringing in a Chief Technology Officer. That was a huge gap for me and for the department. Quite frankly, what I found when I first started in the position is I was having to spend probably a little bit more time than I would like from an operational perspective, Not to say that's a negative thing, because I'm very experienced and versed in that area, but I felt like there were some things that needed to be addressed at maybe at a higher level, if you will, and without that structure in place, it was making it a little bit challenging to get that done. So that was one of the first steps that I took, and quite frankly, it's worked out great. So,
anything else involved with your organization you're going to be looking at reorganizing?
I am looking to do some level of reorganization, but it's still being vetted, so won't be able to share those details just yet because it's still evolving.
Those are the kind of scoops we look for on the show, Brian. We can't get it out of you, huh?
No, unfortunately not.
Let's talk about the strategic plan. You did tell me you do have a strategic plan.
Yes.
In fact, you sent me a copy of it. I didn't get a chance to peruse it at all, but tell us about it. Because I guess it's an update to one that's probably occurred in the past, right?
Yeah, so I would say that, when I first started with the department, one of the things I noticed is that our strategic plan, our IT strategic plan, was a little bit out of date. So I did talk to the current director at the time, Director Will Lightbourne, just said, hey, I think we really need to set a vision for our folks, from an IT perspective. That was one of the comments that I got often when I started with the department is our IT folks didn't feel like we had a clear vision. Where are we heading, right? So I took it upon myself to develop an IT strategy with my team. It's evolved a little bit. So initially it started off with just what I would consider 5 priorities. And it was really around, at the time, it was security. It was building trust within our organization. It was customer service, those types of things. And now we have a more updated version, if you will. I won't call it a full-blown strategy. It's more of a one-page IT strategy document. And the reason I took that path is, how often do we create strategic plans that are multiple pages that no one ever goes back and references? I wanted it to be something that was easy to read and consume. I don't think you have the graphic here, but if you look at the strategy, the background is of children playing. I wanted that to be there because ultimately, that's the reminder of why we do what we do, right? At the Department of Social Services, we serve the most vulnerable citizens within the state of California: children, seniors, adults in need, right? So I wanted to capture that with a graphic, and then just hit on some of the, I guess if you want to call them pillars within the department. So some of those, I would say, off the top of my head, I'll go with automation. So one of the big things that we're pushing for is to automate a lot of our manual and paper processes. A lot of things that we do are paper-oriented. It's a folder that lands on someone's desk to do a wet signature.
Even today?
Even today, yes. So that needs to be improved. We're in technology, right? Those are not, I would consider easy things to fix, if you will. So we're going to really focus in on automation. Security is a big push for us too. One of the first things that I did when I arrived in the department is we went through an independent security assessment. From that, we've developed a 3-year roadmap, and quite frankly, I've already started moving on a lot of that. We've started to bring in a lot more infrastructure, security tools. I can mention some of those if you like, CrowdStrike, Proofpoint. I can't remember the other one, escapes me at the moment. Zscaler. So ultimately, we're looking to build a more robust security infrastructure. And part of that too is also people. And that's another thing that we'll have to work on is staffing up and getting the right skill sets and developing the right skill sets within our organization. So,
one of the things that's so prevalent within your organization, yours, I say, the social service arena, is the relationship between the social workers who utilize many of the case management systems that are being worked on by you and by OSI, et cetera, et cetera. That relationship between them and the IT folks has always, frankly, has been strained because of, retraining issues, lack of support, lack of training, so many things along those lines. How do you deal with that? Is it becoming any easier now that you've had 2 years under your belt?
I think that's always going to be a challenge. I'm not sure that there's an answer for something like that. That's going to be something that's always there. And but that being said, I think we have a great partnership between the state and our 58 counties, and so ultimately, we just have to work and continue to improve, continuous process improvement. So
it's funny you bring that up because the county is so critical to the operation of information systems, particularly in the social service arena. when I was CIO in Massachusetts before I came to California, that people would ask me what was the biggest difference, and I used to say there's really not much difference. Everything in California just had a lot more zeros at the end of it.
Sure.
But I was being a bit facetious because one of the biggest differences was counties. A lot of states don't really have powerful counties or counties that have so much power and responsibilities that counties of California have. And that's an extra layer of complexity, right?
I mean, it is.
For any kind of case management system.
It is, but at the same time, I would say that, every organization has stakeholders, right? It's really around stakeholder management. Again, I'll go back to, I think there's a great partnership there between the state and the 58 counties. And, really it's building that, establishing and continue to build that trust between the groups. And I think it's been, in my 2 years anyway, I haven't seen anything where I feel like there's a disconnect there or anything like that. It's a great partnership.
Let's talk about, you mentioned one of the expense reporting project that's under your bailiwick, but what are some of the other projects that you work with, and what are the current priorities, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I would say there's multiple priorities that we have. Some are ledge mandated. From an IT perspective, some of the bigger things that I think we are working on is an implementation of ServiceNow. We're really trying to revamp how we engage our customers, providing self-service opportunities. I talked earlier about automation, right? I want people to be able to get service from the vector that they want to get service. So some folks prefer to pick up a phone. Some folks want to do, like me, want to do self-service. I don't want to call someone when I need assistance. I want to just go and help myself if possible. So we're looking at a lot of self-service opportunities. That being said, that we'll continue the current service offerings that we have, but it's just another way to get service. Right?
And we're talking primarily about people to come in to apply for some kind of benefit, if you will.
Well, that as well, but in this particular case, it's mainly around support for our customers, our 4,700 state employees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that as well, right? I mean, there's definitely an emphasis when I talk automation, thinking about the citizen. How do we make it easier for citizens to consume our services? How do we make it easier for the 58 counties to provide those services to those citizens? That's something that we're constantly looking at and evaluating. And ultimately, what can we provide? What tools can we provide? What guidance can we provide?
Well, you're just a month into a new fiscal year.
Yes.
Any new initiatives that you'll be working on in 2019-20?
Probably a lot of what I've already disclosed. It's really going to be big around security. There's some things that we've already procured. I mentioned CrowdStrike, Zscaler, Proofpoint. We're going to work on those implementations. ServiceNow will be a big initiative for us as well.
What is ServiceNow?
So that's an IT service management solution. Excuse me. So basically, that's, if you want to call it incident management, it can be your asset management. Also, as we grow it out, it can be it can handle those automation and workflow opportunities that I talked about earlier. So yeah, so that's something that we're doing as well. There's definitely a big push around data, as you know. So looking at opportunities as far as how do we use the data that we have, bringing that all together to make better, I guess, business decisions, if you will. So
you mentioned the automation. Are you looking at, the latest thing is robotics and automation, back office automation and all that. Are you looking at those solutions as well?
Definitely. We're definitely looking at innovation opportunities. You mentioned artificial intelligence. I would say also looking at digital assistants, so chatbots and things like that. How do we, as I said earlier, how do we get better data or information to our customers? It could be pretty overwhelming to go to a website and try to find information. If you look at some of the different state of California websites, it's hard to find the information you need quickly. I think we probably agree with that.
Sure.
There's some opportunities there, and I think one of the things that we need to look at is how do we use artificial intelligence? How do we use chatbot technology, things like that, to help our citizens get the services that they need quickly? So, yeah.
One of the greatest challenges folks have in your position is recruitment, retainment, that kind of thing of the workforce. You did mention the IT classification consolidation, all that. Tell us about the challenges you have with retaining. You say you have several major positions that are open right now. Tell us about the struggles you have filling those and the line positions as well.
Sure. It is challenging. I think every state department would agree. It's very competitive out there right now. I think it's really more of a employees market at the moment. So we need to look at opportunities within our department. How can we draw the best and the brightest? I think we've made great strides in that regard in my 2 years with the department. A big part of that is people here, right? The state community is a very small, IT state community is very small, right? Someone knows someone, right? So if you're doing good work, if you're creating a positive work environment, if you're collaborative and you're innovative and you're really customer focused, people focused, if you will, that's going to draw employees. And that's what we're seeing right now is when I'm in interviews or when I'm talking to folks about joining the Department of Social Services, they want to come because they see what we're doing. They see that we're people focused. It's a very inclusive and positive working environment. The culture is one around innovation, but at the same time, balancing that innovation with maintaining your current portfolio of applications. So yeah, that being said, we are looking at different things. We're looking at things like LinkedIn, like opportunities like that, putting opportunity bulletins out there. Again, just different ways to get the message out. But ultimately, like I said, I think it's really more of the reputation of your department. Do you have a brand where people want to or are drawn to your department because they want to be a part of something? That's something that I'm starting to hear, and that's really something that gets me going. Is people are starting to see what we're doing. Right, the culture's changed quite a bit, and it's one of everybody has a voice. We're very people focused. So,
when it comes to recruiting
Sure.
in the workforce, is it primarily your responsibility, or does the State Human Resource Office play a key role? How does that partnership work, if you will?
Well, from a state perspective, they're really just advertising the bulletins that you put out. I view the recruitment part, I feel like that's really a big part of my job.
Okay.
It's not just the recruitment, but the development of staff, to retain staff, putting folks in opportunities to expand themselves and push themselves professionally. That's something that we do a lot at the Department of Social Services is we try to push our folks, right? We set the bar a little bit higher and push people to become better than I think in some cases they even know they can be. We have a lot of very talented folks. I feel like my job is to push those folks, help them become what maybe they don't even know they can be. So that's a big push for us. And that actually is part of, you mentioned our one-page IT strategy. That's a big part of our strategy too, is building and developing our workforce.
Is there a program you have that affiliated with the higher education or anything like that?
So we do have
from?
Yeah, so we do have departmental programs for upward mobility, but then also I'm planning to develop something specific for our IT team, and that's something that I've talked about with my leadership team. We have an obligation to our team to really push them and provide the tools for them to be successful, right? Because ultimately, if we're doing this right, you mentioned retention. If we're doing this right, I'm probably going to lose some good folks along the way. But I can live with that because ultimately, those folks hopefully will stay within state government and be able to do something positive within those new departments. And we can continue to build within our organization and just keep going from there. It should be a cycle, quite frankly.
I was recently down in Tallahassee and on a panel with a number of, I moderated a panel with a number of folks from the state of Florida, CIOs and CISOs.
Sure.
And one of the issues on workforce, one of the gentlemen said that what they tried to do is they have a program where it used to take a year and a half to train people. They've improved the documentation of what they have in terms of manuals, et cetera, and they're able to get these people up and working and productive within 6 months. And they know they're going to lose them in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but hopefully they'll get an extra year out of them just because of the expedited training that they've established. What do you think of that?
I think that's great. I mean, quite frankly, the sooner that you can bring folks in, if you bring in good folks and you put the tools in front of them to be successful, they should be able to hit the ground running pretty quickly. That's something I think from a state perspective we've got to do better. That's something that we focus on at the Department of Social Services is how can we put the tools in front of folks, the documentation, as you mentioned, things like that, to help them be successful immediately, if you will. You know, it's a lot to take in. You know, I've been with the department for 2 years, and quite frankly, I'm still learning every day, and that's going to be an ongoing process. I'll never have the knowledge of the 20 or 30 year social worker or even the IT person that's worked in the Department of Social Services. I'll never have that, right? But that doesn't mean I can't be effective, and that doesn't mean that if I can put information in front of folks that can help them expedite that, we can see that value quicker, like you said.
You know, that's a good point you brought up. I would think that in your position, you'd want to get some exposure to the social workers and their challenges, if you will, in dealing, particularly when it comes to technology. How do you go about doing that? They give you the opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I have not had the opportunity yet, but I have had those discussions where, you know, I want to get out in the field. I want to go on a ride along and see what that caseworker or that LPA licensee has to deal with to get approvals and such. So I want to do that, and I think that's an important part of any leader's job, whether it's IT or program, is putting yourself in the shoes of the person that's engaging with the citizens, or putting yourself in the shoes of the citizen trying to consume services. So absolutely.
And particularly when these are exactly the kind of people that can really put the kibosh on an implementation of a new system because they're not happy with it.
Agreed.
And they weren't included in the preparation and the analysis that went into building it in the first place, which is critical to its success, right?
I think we've seen that happen in the past. I think that's something that we do well at the Department of Social Services is we consider the change that impact is going to have on the folks that actually utilize the system. So getting that engagement, getting that feedback, and understanding that whatever we're building is not for the sake of technology. Right? Ultimately, what we're building is, again, for the state and in some cases the counties to provide those services to the most vulnerable people in the state of California. Right? That's what we do. So.
You know, I don't think any conversation with a CIO is complete unless you've talked about security and the cloud and probably a couple other data analytics, et cetera.
Sure.
But when it comes to the cloud, what's the DSS way?
So when I arrived, there was a move to a single cloud. We were in the process of making, if you want to call it a lift and shift, we had to change that approach, quite frankly. I view the cloud, we're going to be in more of a hybrid role, so multi-cloud, which will include some, whether it's Azure, AWS, whatever the cloud may be. I think that's the way things are going, quite frankly.
Do you have a data center in your
So we do have some hardware on-prem. I would not necessarily call it a robust data center, quite frankly.
So you're talking about the OTEX
Yes, so we
cloud
are
offerings?
Yes, so we are in OTEX tenant managed services. That's where we primarily sit right now, and we've made some moves into both Azure and AWS. So
okay. And all right, security. Say you've got did you say you had an opening for a security officer?
I do. Yes.
Good luck, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's some good.
So how are you going to hire? How are you going to find somebody to hire?
Hopefully you'll help me with that right now.
That's right.
Just kidding.
You're so kind.
No, the reality is, security stuff. That's I would say technically for me, security has been my wheelhouse. That's really where I've played as a technician, and then even in my leadership roles early on in my career. So it's a space that I'm very comfortable in. That being said, when I'm recruiting, I will have something specific in mind. That person really needs to understand security, both from a technical and a process and procedure perspective. But then also it's helpful to understand how to balance security and operations. Right? We tend to, I think in some cases, the traditional sense from a security officer is no, right? No, because it's not secure. Right. Well, the reality is we need to look at it from a risk perspective, right? What level of risk is the department willing to take? We need to be clear from an organizational perspective. Here's the risk if we do A, for example. If we move to the cloud, here are the risks. Are we comfortable in doing that? That's the type of thing that I'll look for from an information security officer to help me with. It's helping make those decisions, helping educate folks, and being more of a partner, if you will, not so much if you want to call it oversight.
Yeah. It's interesting. California has a very relatively unique approach, I think, to security with the state CIO's office, Peter Liebert, that we talked about before he left. And then we had the Adjutant General on the show from the National Guard.
Sure.
And of course, we're hoping to have Scott Howland from CHP on in the near future. And that's kind of the troika that California has in terms of investigating, or I shouldn't say investigating. Peter Liebert has the compliance side. Sure. The National Guard has the investigation. I shouldn't say investigation. the detection of testing the network,
Sure.
et cetera, for
Yeah.
issues, and then CHP is the investigative arm if there is an issue. How's that working out for agencies like departments like yours, not just yours, but
Sure.
across the state?
You know, I think
Have
it's
you had
working
your
well.
audits done?
Well, you know what?
Everybody get asked that question.
Actually, I'm not due until next year. But as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to get in front of it. So I didn't want to wait for the military audit. I wanted to do something immediately when I got to the department. So that was one of the first initiatives.
I would think that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Rather
you
than waiting
know,
to get the bad news, you
yeah.
be proactive about it.
you know, you need to know where you're at.
Yeah.
You need to really have a baseline of where you're at. Again, having the security background that I do, there were things that I felt like, you know, we can do better. There were opportunities, if you will. And so I felt like it was something we couldn't wait on. It wasn't something I felt like, okay, let's wait 2 years and see where our baseline is. We need to figure that out now. Let's make that investment now. We have a responsibility to the citizens of California to make sure that the data is secure. We have a responsibility to the departments and the counties, and I take that very seriously. So ultimately, we embarked on that security assessment, if you will. Like I said, we ended up with a 3-year roadmap, and we've already started to take actions. We've already started to procure tools and implement tools that are going to help secure our infrastructure. We've started to implement more processes and procedures that can really help with any potential issues. So, yeah, definitely making some great strides there, and we're going to continue to do that over the next few years.
You know, one of the issues when it comes to data analytics has to do with detection of fraud.
Sure.
And we've had folks from health services on the show. We've had folks from the fraud department over at the health services on the show. And I would think that the fraud issue is another big issue when it comes to any kind of welfare eligibility and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you have the counties I know have fraud shops in each one of their jurisdiction. How is that an item that's on your agenda for building a new detection system for fraud like they're doing at health services, or is that just down the road a ways? Or maybe it's ongoing now.
Yeah, I would say that's something that's already ongoing. We do take fraud very seriously. Obviously, we have a unit that is actually outside of IT that deals with fraud, but at the same time, we're very closely aligned and we work very well together. I could definitely see that going forward, there'll be some opportunities there.
Yeah,
could see
it's
that.
Bruce Lim at Audits and Investigations for Healthcare Services.
Okay.
And I'm sure you probably have a branch just similar
Yes,
to that.
we do.
Right.
We do.
Because it's such a huge issue when we're talking about so much money.
Oh, yeah.
In healthcare services, they're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's 130 billion a year, for Christ's sakes. So you're talking big bucks, even if it's only a small percentage.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And you'll have to do the same thing, I think, across the board
absolutely.
with all the eligibility programs that you, you cover.
And we partner well with healthcare services in that regard.
And I've just mentioned a few of them, right? I mean, welfare system, you have the TANF, which I guess is CalWorks, right? In California.
Yeah.
CalFresh is
we have CalFresh, we have
stamps.
CalWorks. I think you mentioned some of the other. We have the EASE, the income eligibility verification systems.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So
that's a new one, right?
It's been in place for quite a while, and there's two different components to that. Piece of it sits with healthcare services, another piece sits with us. Again, when you mention fraud, that's something that crosses the whole agency, and so we have to have that partnership, and we do. So.
Right. One of the issues that always comes up in these conversations is dealing with vendors.
Sure.
Certainly, in a large organization like yours, you have to keep a vendor-friendly environment. But how do you like to work with vendors? What's their best approach to deal with somebody like Brian Wong at DSS?
Well, the way I would say the best way to approach that with me is how can you help further the mission of the Department of Social Services, right? That's the best way to approach me. I get emails, I get phone calls, but what I look for is where are those opportunities to really make a difference in that mission, right? If you can really speak to something that hits home there, that will probably get us into more of a conversation. I partner well with the vendor community. Like I said, I've been in the state now for about 13 years, so I'm all in IT. So I have a very good relationship with the vendor community. I see the value that they bring. I'm always looking for partnerships, and quite frankly, many times I'm just looking for a conversation to see if maybe something that we talk through as we have a conversation similar to this, we may find something where there's an opportunity to partner up on something. So yeah. definitely.
So what's their best approach to approach you?
Sure. I would probably say emails are fine. I don't mind people, emailing me directly with their thoughts, and I get those often. And like I said, if something catches my attention or I see a potential fit, we'll have that conversation.
So what are your what's the most enjoyable aspect of your job?
I think I alluded to it earlier. It's furthering the mission of the Department of Social Services. I can't speak to that enough. That, and I would say being able to help my folks, my staff, seeing them grow professionally and being able to provide those services to the state of California, right? There's nothing more that I enjoy than being able to further that mission and help people, quite frankly. So.
And the least enjoyable aspect, or should I go back to the previous question with vendors?
No, I don't know that I have a least favorite. I love the job. This is something that professionally I've been striving for a little bit now.
What's the biggest surprise?
I would say the biggest surprise for me was just being able to trying to separate the operational responsibilities as well as what I would consider more the visionary responsibilities of a CIO. That was probably the initial surprise for me, is jumping into it. I had a lot of grandiose plans of things I wanted to do quickly. I've been able to do those things, but it took me a little bit longer than anticipated. So that did take me by surprise a little bit. But other than that, I can't think of anything really negative. There have been some very good surprises, if you will. I was very, appreciative of how folks received me at the Department of Social Services, both within my own staff, within the program areas. It's a very welcoming environment. They wanted change, so that was a really good fit for me. I appreciate the fact that when I got there and I sat down with the different program leaders, if you will, they were very open with me. They were very direct on, this is what we want, this is where we think you can improve this organization. And I took that to heart. And I think we've made great strides in that regard in the first 2 years with the Department of Social Services.
Well, we only have a minute or so left, so tell me, do you have, who are the mentors that you admired that helped you on your road to where you are today?
Oh, wow. There are too many to name, quite frankly. I've had some great mentors, both inside and outside of IT. And I've had different folks that have taught me how to think of things at a higher level, how to deal with people, and then how to become a visionary, right? Really balancing, like I said, I'm really big on innovation. That's something that I really like to focus on. But that being said, you can't forget about your bread and butter, right? Because operationally, if those lights don't stay on, for lack of a better term, that's what gets you into trouble.
That's
right?
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to have to conclude our program today. I want to thank you all for watching, and special thanks to our guest, Brian Wong with DSS. And thanks to our sponsors, Veeam, Advanced Onion, Akamai, Karasoft, Symantec, FireEye, VMware, Granicus, CrowdStrike, and our Washington, D.C. partner, Federal News Network. Video for this program will be available in approximately 24 hours. We look forward to having you join us next time on Tech Leader TV. Till then, so long for now. I'm John Thomas Flynn. Good job.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.